Welcome to the Connectors Podcast, the show that explores the importance of making meaningful connections for personal and professional growth and happiness. We will share how building and recognizing strong connections in life can help you achieve your goals, find fulfillment in your work, and how you can create opportunities to build a purposeful and fulfilling future. Come along for the journey and let's connect.
Youssef talks about all the creative projects that he worked on recently and how volunteering and giving your time comes back as a flow of energy with the ways that he's been able to travel. He mentions 5 different countries and doing all sorts of different projects as a volunteer, and talking about ultimately how the human connections are the most important things around us, because creating a community is just part of the human experience.
I like the piece about trust, how building trust within yourself allows you to build trust with others, and therefore that creates a good connection, and then good things come out of those connections. Doing what you love and creating great relationships leads to those better places that you want to go. Why leaving behind social media was a good decision for Youssef. Seeing the world through his lens, and all the ways in which he inspires positive social impact.
So stay tuned for a very heartfelt episode with Youssef Shafan.
Well, welcome to the show, Youssef.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining the Connectors. Really glad to have you here today. And I'm going to turn it over to Quinten to do your introduction.
Absolutely. I am delighted and honored to have Youssef Shafan here with us. Youssef is a director, a photographer, an author, and a creator of multiple projects. He is very active in the artistic, cultural, and social scenes in his hometown of Montreal and around the world. And we'll talk about some of those awesome projects you've been on. Observer and explorer, he uses his professional and personal communication skills as vectors of positive change for the short and the long term. Thank you so much for joining us, Youssef.
Thank you for having
welcome.
me.
I want to celebrate some of the projects that I've been seeing you posting on LinkedIn. Tell us what you've been up to, man.
Yeah, it's funny because I usually do so many things that I don't even have time to share them. But then I'm like, it's good to people ask me what I do in life, still ask me, my parents ask me, my family asks me. So I'm like, yeah, when I share these, they know I what I really do, because I feel it's a little eclectic. I do so many things, work with so many people, even though it's there's always something connecting these projects in a way or another. In the introduction, you just mentioned, yes, culturally, socially, there's always something connecting these projects with these dots. So yeah, recently I just worked on a series for a Canada Media Fund. It's the 2nd season. We just traveled to Vancouver. We did some shoots in Montreal, and we're launching this season where the host has conversations with people that are really into transforming the industry into being more inclusive. So we just did the series. I just went to Washington to, that is quite unexpected, but it was a Haitian Ladies Network event. So for one weekend, I became a Haitian lady, and I was almost not only the only white guy, but the only white male. So I was happy to be there because I've been following foundation as a volunteer for 12 years now. The name is Campé and works in Haiti. So I get to go around with them in different events. So this is something I have recently done too. So yeah, these projects, photography, video, leading me to so many places, and I feel quite lucky.
Awesome. I loved the video that you posted of everyone celebrating at Campé. It looked like such a fun weekend.
Yeah, I mean, like I try with the places, the people I work with, even if sometimes we do important work on the ground, whether here it's in Haiti or myself with Syria because of my origins. I think helping is sometimes, yeah, it is serious, but it can also be fun, and I think it can be both, and that what at least for myself drives me into. Just doing more and being involved, it's because it's also fun, and I think we can combine both.
Mm. You know, that's really interesting. That makes me think of I'm doing some research right now on connection and what connection is built out of, or what like interlocks into it. And I was watching a webinar that was talking about trust plus behavior equals credibility. And what you're talking about, the many, many years that you spent volunteering for Campe have brought you all sorts of other cool projects. And like, you know, you flew down to Washington. Like, I guess you didn't do that out of your own budget, right? Because they recognize the value in what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm a volunteer, but I get to have these invitations. But as you say, trust, I think, is quite important. And trust, you could build it quickly, but it's something you can also build over time. So yes, after being with an organization, and Campe is 12 years, La Maison de la Syrie is more than 10 years. So when you do something for such a long time and you're involved, I think it's recognized in different ways, with just people following you, your friends and family, but it also shows how serious you are about something. So yeah, trust is, I think, goes in different ways, but yeah, I think time also shows that trust. And when you have that trust, it leads you to places you could not go. Like just this weekend with all these Haitian ladies, I think I was able to be there because the organization has trust in me, and I'm just not like a random dude coming in just for one weekend and leaving. I've been there for so long, and I'll probably be there for a long time again. So yeah, trust, I think, is one important point there.
Yeah, it seems to be a really important point in non-profits, and for sure.
And we talk about that a lot here. You know, most of the time when we have our guests on the show, that's a huge component of what we do, is building trust, because that's why we like to do the pre-recording meeting, because we get to just have a little bit of a conversation, build a little bit of trust before we get in the show. They can see how we behave with each other. And like you said, build that credibility, Quinten. So I like that call out.
Yeah.
And to bring it back to connections, trust, I think, builds better connections. Well, not necessarily better, but let's say stronger, because you can have different types of connections, but the trust and the love and the work. And when you said behavior, I related to many things, including hard work. And I think when you combine these, it also creates stronger bonds and good connections, because we have different types of connections.
So keeping on that theme, Youssef, I was just, as an artist, and you're always looking through the lens. So you're either taking a video or a photo.
Almost always. Because I sometimes get in front of the camera, but let's say 90% of the time I'm behind it.
I didn't know what your face looked like for the first 3 years, buddy.
Black and white.
So
sorry, Joe.
That's okay. So you're an observer, and I consider myself an observer, but you know, you're a creator through observing people in the world through this lens. So is there a component of that? Like, how do you connect through the lens? Like, what you're trying to capture when you're looking through the lens?
I just love having a camera on me, because it happens all the time where I'm usually when traveling, because you know your mind, it just expands and you see things differently. But most of the time, before taking my camera out, if we're talking about photography or even video, I'm like, there's nothing interesting here. Like, I don't know what I would take a picture of. I don't feel anything. And as soon as I take the camera out, it kind of puts at least myself in a mindset where I see things differently. And when I say observer, this is what I mean, because I feel I just kind of open my mind to see things differently and observe and take the time to do that. And then this is where just like the beautiful comes, and with a camera, you're able to grab these moments, these places, these people. And yeah, this is what for me is observing and taking the time to create these connections. And if I bring it to humans, because lots of my projects and photography is related to humans in a way or another. But for me, also having this camera and looking through the lens connects me with the person on the other side of the camera. So at first, to be honest, I was maybe like 10 years ago, kind of shy, not wanting to take portraits because I felt like getting too much into someone's bubble or kind of just taking their intimacy. But with time and with one specific project, I was kind of forced to do portraits, and I kind of learned how to do it politely, and again, creating in a very short period of time a sense of trust. And I think you can do that very quickly for picture, for example. So yes, this is how I see these connections made through the camera.
That makes me think of the Waves of Change in Quebec project, which is how I originally met you, because this was all about 6 generations of immigrants coming and settling in Montreal. And Youssef was in charge of the photography and the videography, and I was invited as a guest. So I think there were like 40 people who were interviewed, and it was during the pandemic. It was very odd. We wanted this closeness and good conversation, but we all had to be like 2 meters apart and masked when we weren't being recorded. It was a very odd situation. Hey,
odd and challenging, to be honest. But like looking at what we've done, I'm super proud of the work we've done, because yeah, the situation was quite challenging, as you say.
Yeah, I just cannot imagine capturing the sound for all of these people spaced out, and oh my god, and good videography and close-ups, and yeah, challenge.
On that note of the pandemic, did you notice for yourself through that time, was there anything that you had to shift within your business? Like obviously we talked about a couple of those things you just started now with the masks, and you had to have the distance and all those things, but were there things, there's people I've spoken to when the pandemic came, they had to do a lot of, shifting or pivoting of their business and what they how they had to look at it. Did that happen for you? And how did you navigate that?
In the beginning, as everything was kind of blurry and we didn't know where we were going, I think for me, when I realized it was kind of serious and because I work with Cirque du Soleil, I've been working with them since 2015. And then I read this headline saying that Cirque du Soleil cuts 95% of employees. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is serious. This is super serious. And then I got to think, okay, what 2 things? What within what I'm good at, I can still keep working on or still do during the pandemic. And then I was also thinking because I'm I work as a freelancer, who out of my clients will stay over the next year? And my first thought was like, yeah, probably education won't stop. So I reached out to all the people I work with within the education world and just kind of said, hey, hi guys, I can do this and that. And it kind of ended up working out. And I got quite lucky too, because so many of the cultural projects were canceled or postponed, and a lot of them had the equivalent in video to compensate a little bit. So I got quite lucky to be able to film theater, film some music, and so many things during the pandemic. So I was lucky enough to be able to work a lot, but once again, super interesting projects, because as no one was able to go see plays or music shows. I was super lucky just to be able to record them. So I was also being able to enjoy art and culture during the pandemic. So yeah, there was a shift, but I think I quickly had to adapt. And I also had just became a parent at the beginning of the pandemic, really at the beginning. So I think there is this kind of mental thinking when you're a parent where, at least if I thought for myself, I wasn't doing things for myself anymore, or at least basically I had to take care of my little boy. So there's this kind of, okay, you have to make it happen. You have to make it work. So you find ways.
Because you're in provider mode, protector mode, survival mode.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah.
You got to make it happen
All
no
at
matter
one time.
what it is. Of course, there are sacrifices. And I remember like one of the first things I've done when I started realizing how serious it was like canceling all my subscriptions. Like I was like, let's be as conservative as possible because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was in that mode at the beginning.
And you have another baby on the way, correct? Yeah.
Yes, in a couple of weeks. So this time I think it should be easier because it was so complicated to have a baby just at the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
And it was crazy. You talked, Quinten, about work, how it was so weird and different, but with family too, just having our family not being able to connect in a normal way, in a sense, with their our child. That was also quite weird and sometimes difficult. So yeah, these connections were kind of so weird. Let's put it this way. So yeah, second baby should be a little easier.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. It was so different for everyone, right? And I really felt for people that had little kids at home. During that time, my son was in grade 9, and it was, he had the worst year because he did. It was like 4 hours of math every day.
Oh Lord!
And just socially, it's like the age where you want to be with your friends and
hanging
go out
after school. Yeah, exactly. Crazy.
What I think of is it was just so different and hard for everyone. Just like I try not to put myself in the position of, oh, it was harder for me. I think everyone lived the challenge in different ways. But I think what's important is, in a way, try to just get out of these situations stronger. So, yeah.
Yeah, and like trying to get out of the situation stronger, it's got a lot to do with your mindset and your attitude, how you're thinking about something. Because like you're from Syria, I'm from Zimbabwe. They're not very stable situations. We both grew up in very tumultuous times, and I think that impacts us.
And both you and I had to leave for different reasons, but and I was much younger than you, so it was more my parents. But we kind of lived these big changes in life where you have to also have this mindset that leads you into moving forward. So you said that you didn't see my face for the first years, but I saw yours a lot because I did the editing of the show, which was both episodes and documentary. And yeah, I really liked what you shared during the episode, during our conversations. So yeah, I could not directly relate, but I kind of understand how hard it could be to leave for some reasons and have to readapt to new place, new people, new reality.
Yeah, it ain't so easy.
The weights have changed. You've mentioned it a few times, Quinten. Can we get a link so we could share it within this episode?
I would love to get a link for that for sure. I'm very proud of this documentary. I'm in the shorter sections. I'm not in the full documentary, but So proud of it. And the producer, Guy Rogers, I would love to have as a guest on the show.
Awesome.
And I was speaking
He was
to
able to connect so many people and generations and backgrounds. So yeah, he would be a great guest. That's for sure.
He'd be an awesome guest. He's an old gentleman with long grey hair and a really long grey beard. He's very wizardly academic. And then
Like
I was
you're a
chatting
Gandalf. Is that what you're
he's
saying?
like a clever intellectual Gandalf.
Yeah. We'd love to hear from you. Please engage with us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. So tell us about why you got rid of your business card, and why your best business card is people leaving their jobs.
Yeah, well, when I started as a freelance photographer and videographer, for sure I had like my business card. I wanted to be original, and I had like one weird one which was a little complicated. Then I moved on to something more simple, and then I had the ultimate one, which is really a cool one, which was just like a frame, and I would take a picture of someone, print it instantly, put it in the frame, and give it to that person, and that would be my business card. So that was pretty cool. Lots of work though, but I ended up realizing that I was like getting all these business cards from so many people and not doing anything with them. So I thought, yeah, probably it's the same when I give mine. It just ends up, I don't know where. So I just with time felt that, if you really want to connect with someone, you don't need a business card. With the tools we have, it's so easy to just take a phone number or email address. So I felt like it would almost be a better way to know who really wants to stay connected with you, if they not that weird, like, oh yeah, I'll take your business card just to be polite, which is fine. But I felt it kind of just narrowed down directly who really wanted to stay in touch. And then, speaking of trust and behavior and good connections, this leads me to the second part of the question, the point, which is something I mentioned, being my best business card is just creating these connections with people, working hard, and creating beautiful and good material, photography, video. And then what happens, and it happened quite a few times in the last years, but I've been working with someone in an institution, museum, theater, and after a couple of years they would leave that place and go somewhere else. But then when being there, thinking of me and saying, hey, Youssef, we'd like to do a video, we're thinking of you. And I'm like, this is amazing. So I got to work with so many different institutions because I had great relations with the people, and the people are not related to institutions. So when they have been moving around, I have been moving around with them. So this has been my best business card in the last years.
I love it. I think you're absolutely right that, I go to a lot of networking events. Some people are almost like waiting at the door ready to give you their card before you even introduced yourself or had a conversation. I have a bowl of business cards at home.
I have a drawer.
I plan on going through it at some point. And every once in a while I think, oh, I remember meeting somebody, and I'll rummage through it. I can't even find their card. So I agree. Like, I think the in-person conversations, the relationships that you establish, the trust that you establish with people, and people will find you if they want to find you.
And what I'd add to that is, even though I'm sometimes in a context where it's more officially or almost officially a networking moment or place, even then I prefer not talking about my work. I prefer creating a good connection with that person, and because the people I want to work with are people I want to have fun with. If we go back to the fun, even with work, when if I'm bored with work, or if I don't have a good relation with someone, which rarely happens, I just don't want to, maybe I'm lucky enough to be able to allow that to myself, in a business sense. But I also want to have a good relation personally with the person I'm working with, because I don't want my work to be just something I do that I don't like and that's it. So when I go to an event or I know there might be a business opportunity, what I'm trying to sell, because it's selling in a way, is just myself as hopefully someone interesting, or at least interesting for that person. And then when this relation is created, and then it ends up maybe being a possibility for work, I think it just enhances the relationship personally and professionally.
You have me rethinking some of the things that Quinten and I have talked about for the podcast, because we've talked about getting business cards and these little printout promo pages and all these things. And now
I'm not saying you shouldn't. No, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm saying there's always like a creative or good way of doing things, and at the end, if you guys just do what you, and I think it comes back to also what we do. If you do things and you love it and you have a good energy, that also attracts people. So that's also a good business card.
Exactly. And we're loving what we're doing. So it does seem to be attracting the people that we want, even just being on LinkedIn and getting out and having conversations. So it's a good point.
So like, you don't have a business card, and you also chose to get off a bunch of social media. So how does that work when you're trying to have connections and stuff? Because we're like quite active on social media. We think that year one, we need to sort of like really get awareness and engagement out there. So what do you think?
Absolutely. It can be complicated. It reminds me, let's talk about it directly. Facebook, the relationship status, it's complicated.
I hate that. It's like, it's just put there so people ask you, okay, what's complicated?
But the relationship with that platform got complicated, because I remember joining like more than 10 years ago, and it was so nice, and you would connect with people, and it was beautiful. But then things got crazier and crazier, and at one point it was too much. Like, there was for me a list of major reasons why I wanted to leave, and there's always this FOMO, fear of missing out, professionally, personally, and it was also the case for me. But in the balance of things, for me, what the company was doing wasn't worth what I was receiving. And this is when I decided to leave. And it was like leaving for good. And I remember, because I left the meta world, which was Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And I remember they're so good at marketing and just like pushing on that FOMO button. And the worst one was the WhatsApp message. They give you like the last message before you can still change your mind. And it was, if you leave, you will never be able to come back with that number.
Come on.
And I'm like, oh, wow. Taking a screenshot, and this is exactly one of the reasons why I'm leaving. Boom, I'm out, because it kind of creates this web, these tentacles that force you to stay within a world. And I'm the kind of independent guy, or pleased to be as independent as possible. So I don't want to create something, or I put like all my eggs in the same basket. So I felt, this is also one of the reasons that I'm leaving. And I remember, it's crazy how like we have been brainwashed to think we really need these platforms. And I'm not saying they're not useful. They are in so many ways. But if I specifically talk about Facebook, I remember so many people, because I had a good network, I had lots of reactions when I would share things. And people were like, oh, but how are you going to make it without? How are you going to make it without Instagram? Like, this is, you're a freelancer. You need it. You can't live without it. And it's crazy, because I just realized, because so many people said the same exact thing, it just made me think, oh, okay, we have been brainwashed into thinking that. And it's true. And again, it's true at a certain level. But I was like, oh, okay, we have to be able to go beyond that. And I'm lucky in a way because my networks were kind of already big before. Like I left in 2019, and there was like so many things going on with the platform, and I was like lucky enough to already have a good like network to be able to leave this world. And it's been 4 years now, and I haven't regretted once. And I kind of worked very well with job opportunities. So yeah, it's possible. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's possible to live without some of these that seem to be very necessary.
Yeah.
Social world.
No, I like what you said though. You know, in terms of people not questioning these things a little bit more, right? So we had our friend R Blank on the show this week, and he has a podcast called the Healthier Tech Podcast. And it's all about having a good relationship with the technology that we use and how to use it and not allow it to use us, right? So
we should be in touch.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, he's great. So we did talk about that, you know, disconnection from your phone, and he's been off social media, he said, since 2015 and has no issues with his business and being off of it. But we mentioned about people need to be empowered to use their technology in the way that they need it, and not in the way that it's being shown to us, just like you said, like the tentacles kind of reaching out and trying to pull us all into this world that not everybody needs to be part of. So yeah.
And I feel it's not only bringing us into this world, but it's leaving, like pulling ourselves from ourselves, in the sense that what I feel is we are so connected in a way that with the others and virtually and all the time. And that's the thing. Time is that you have less time with yourself in general. And I think these are precious moments we don't have as much as we had before. And I think they are very important, just to take the time to think, to just like wander around, not think, and just like be bored and oh yeah, look at like the birds. And it's also something, the time that we don't have with ourselves, or even with the ones around us. That's also when I said I had a list of reasons leaving. It's just the amount of time that you spend there. When I talked about balance, yes, you get things out of it, but when I left the Facebook world, including Instagram and WhatsApp, which take lots of time in your life, it's then also that you realize, when you look around, how long people spend on them. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it really eats it up. Hey, that makes me think of time in two areas. So we talked about marketing, and when like I'm thinking as a marketer, I want people to get to the end of a product or a service, and I want them to buy. And the thing that we use is called a trigger. And a trigger is something that happens instantly, and then you deal with the consequences afterwards. But it creates this pressure to act now. And then the second thing I think of is a bad management tactic in a workplace situation, where your manager creates false pressure or false deadlines or false stress,
urgency.
just to make you work quicker rather than working
better or well.
And usually what happens, that comes from the top down. I always notice, I don't want to call out my leader here, but just I notice sometimes when there's pressure from the top, and then that starts to trickle down, right? So the minute it's like the higher ups are like, we need this yesterday, then all of a sudden that creates this urgency for everybody.
Yeah, but it's not a good way to be. Your manager should be standing up for you and going, well, we've already got pre-established timelines, this is changing the scope of the work or whatever. But I get that pressure because I was in corporate and I'm now doing more freelancing.
I'm sure I've created that pressure with you at times. I think even last week we had, I'm texting Quinten, I'm leaving him voice notes, and I'm like, what about this and this? And I start getting in my head. And then I realize I've now just put that pressure on him.
We did have a little moment like that, yes.
Yeah. We got through it. We got through
fine.
it.
Yeah, pressure can also be something not too bad.
Yeah, depends, right? Like, I don't mind if there's a big project and the last 2 weeks I'm like getting things done and wrapping everything up together because it's done well, and there's a good energy to it.
It can bring energy, and drive you forward. So
yeah,
absolutely. One time talked with someone who was doing his research on procrastination, and from his point of view wasn't necessarily something negative, because we kind of tend to see it as something that is not good, pushing always like in time until you really, really need to. But it was interesting because now I see it this way too, which is if I push it, there's a reason why I'm pushing it. Maybe because I don't like what I'm doing or I don't want to do it. And then maybe having this pressure kind of forces you into being more creative or more efficient. So yeah, it can be good to procrastinate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I like that you brought that up, because I think we do need space. I don't know if you find this in your business. It sounds like what you're saying is like sometimes you need the space. You need the kind of give yourself the space just to actually look at things maybe a little from a different perspective, or you don't want to rush it because another idea might come up or something like that. Does that happen for you in your work?
Yeah, that's like one problem, not being able to think out of your own box because you're so busy. It's a good thing in a way because this is the system we're in. We have to work, and but when I get these moments to just like be able to breathe a little and rethink of something as basic as like the workflow with clients and like the spreadsheet I use to follow up on things, just like having these moments to think of how I'm doing things and how it could be done in a better way. Or I remember one example too where I was in so much pressure that I just took a moment to talk with my girlfriend and say, hey, like I'm not, like I can't do it, there's so much. And because she had an point of view from the outside, she was just able to tell me, oh, like, okay, what parts of your work could you maybe ask someone else to help you with?
Mm-hmm.
And then this just very simple conversation led to doing work differently, and it changed my life. I remember, like, I think it was in 2021 that I just changed one tiny bit of my process because I had this outside point of view, because we took the time to think about it, and it just changed my workflow and made life so much easier for myself and so much like more fun. So yeah, taking the time to be able to reflect on a like more bigger level is definitely something that can help. But you once again need like the luxury of being able to step outside and take the time to do that.
So allowing the space and time, and then maybe getting a different perspective from somebody else is a way to look at things. I know we tend to internalize things a lot, and then you're right. Once we have a conversation with somebody else, it can bring out a whole different idea.
And maybe that's something I feel maybe a little missing from the freelance world, which is not having these conversations, or it happens like project by project because you work with people. But I feel sometimes that when you're in a group at work, or you have like share an office, you can more frequently challenge ideas and bring them to other levels. I just really love when you brainstorm and you think you have a good idea and it is good, but you just share it with someone else and it right away just goes to the next level, and I'm like, oh, okay, nice. So I love this, and it's sometimes missing from the work that I do because I'm often by myself, even though if I work with a lot of people. But yeah, having these conversations with others, I feel with my experience has always like got things to a better level. Yeah.
And are you part of any networking for freelancers or things where you can connect with other people on your?
As I was speaking, I was like, oh, this could be a good idea.
Yeah.
Right.
But and my first thought that comes right after that is how to create this in a way that can help everyone, because sometimes when you're in that world, there's also lots of competition, because you have to, well, just like with companies, you kind of have to find your way, and sometimes there's only like one person that's going to be chosen for a mandate contract. So it's kind of that balance between supporting each other. And I do have a network of people I work with, and we refer each other, help each other, but it's also that balance in between how to create this network, but also be able to find your way.
And make sure you get the projects that you want to work on and that are going to sustain you and your needs. And that's so true.
It's like finding that balance, I feel.
When I think of my group of entrepreneurs, freelancers around me, it's a lot of people that I work with who are in a similar industry, and we work on projects together if there's defined roles where we're different. And then like often the people that I have really good conversations with and I dig into my company and what I'm doing and my strategy, they're entrepreneurs that are in a completely different field. Like I've got an architect's friend that he and I are always brainstorming different ideas for him, different ideas for me, and we get a lot of good stuff.
So maybe the network, there could be other networks and connections between people from just different worlds and backgrounds, so there's no competition.
Right. But you're right, the competition thing is tough, especially if we're working in like our industries are arts, culture, NGOs, charities. Like these organizations get small pieces of money, and they have to do a lot of stuff with a small fund, a small budget. So
but it's also a good way to when we're saying, someone giving you advice from like another point of view, well, I think this is even like a stronger way to do it, because there are relations, like you said, architecture, design, there are still like links between these worlds. But it's definitely interesting to see if there could be like these kind of connections that are made more on a regular basis.
I'd like to I think I'm just thinking about our listeners, Youssef, and we have a lot of people on the show and a variety of different industries. I think you're very, very, very much a creative, obviously, in what you do in your work. And I'm just wondering for people who maybe are thinking about trying something like that in the creative world, whether it be photography, video, like writing, whatever it might be, like I don't know how you started, but in terms of like getting your creative sort of juices flowing and trying something and stepping into that world, what would you share with those people that are thinking about doing it and how they can kind of tap into, something different, I guess?
Thinking of what you're saying, and I'm like, I sometimes find myself really not creative, in the sense that when you do something and you're kind of good at it in a way or another, and because it works, you just do it again, and it works, and that doesn't force you into thinking of new ways of doing things. And I'm at that level after doing it for more than 10 years, and I'm like, I feel that I'm not as creative as I can be. And because also I get into this loop of work and family obligations and personal obligations, that you feel that you don't have time for the creative stuff that you end up unfortunately putting on the side. So I'm listening to your introduction and I'm like, oh no, I'm not the creative guy I could be. So maybe the advice should be for myself first.
I think we disagree on that. But
Yeah.
But yeah, an advice would be, I think, just like if I start from how I did it, I studied journalism and I wasn't, aiming and going in any real direction when I started, and it kind of leaded more into photography and video. There is some like documentary part to the work I do, with series, with behind the scenes, with portraits I do. So there is that, but I just ended up following where things were leading. And I think this is something beautiful in the world we're in now. And this could be maybe a form of advice, is that we're not really forced into one structure as we may have seen in the last decade, where people would do something and do that same thing for 25 years, 30 years, and maybe not even liking it. That's the worst part. It's, from my opinion, like, this is not something I want to do. So, and it's maybe like depending on personalities, but my personality is the type of just trying to have fun, enjoy what I do it well. And in my case, I just like did things here and there, and the kind of route created itself along the way. But it's funny because even though I haven't had a real objective, I have like master plans. Yeah, just like a sense of more or less where I want to go with bigger projects. But I feel that without having that, if we go back to what we were talking about, doing something you love and creating trust and just having good relations, it leads you to good places too. It just ends up working out. And if now on a macro level, if I look at the all the work I do, the people I work with, the opportunities I get traveling, like some people, like even myself, but lots of people could wonder, like, how does it happen that even for a nonprofit like foundation, I was able to travel like to IT, to New Orleans, to Europe last year, to Washington 2 weekends ago. With the Canada Media Fund, I was able to go to Vancouver. With Syrian of the World, which is a photography project I have under the umbrella of La Maison de la Syrie, I was in Amsterdam a month ago. So it's just like these opportunities that I don't look for necessarily, but because somehow this is the world I create indirectly, because it ends up always happening. So I feel without having these objectives clearly in mind, when you have them somewhere and you just do the work, it's going to happen. So I don't know if this can count as an advice.
No, I love that. And you just got me, I thought of a new hashtag, connector receptors. So your connector receptors are live and kicking and on, and so that you're getting all this good information and it's going out into the world.
Yeah, because I'm the kind of person that doesn't like I'm agnostic. I don't think of like supernatural things in the world, but I do believe in good vibes, in the sense that when you see someone and you have these good vibes that you send, they're going to be received in a way or another, and it just bounces back. So giving, receiving. Like, my philosophy is, if everyone gives, everyone receives. Like, it ends up adding itself at the end. So the more you get it out there, the more indirectly, if it's not the person you gave to, it's going to be someone else at some time. So this is how I see these interconnections, and this, as you said, giving and receiving.
And last question for you. What is connection for you? What does it mean for you?
I think I'll kind of recap maybe what I said, because
Yeah, I was
there are
thinking it was
Yeah, that
elements
pretty
of-
much was the answer to that
Yeah.
one.
I think connection, good connection, are just being honest about who you are, because it doesn't mean that because I'm honest and I'm showing you who I am that we will connect, but it means, in my opinion, that I will connect with the right people. So I think not having these, it's hard because socially we put these masks, we show things in different contexts, and fair enough, we don't have to be the same person all the time, everywhere. But as true to ourselves we can be, and it is a challenge, I think it will lead us to connect with the right people for our world. So I think, yeah, good connections is just being honest with ourselves, which means being honest with the others. And then it will lead to, because connections, like anthropologically, what are they for? It's just to help us go through life and have as good as possible of lives. And it's as simple as having a good connection with a partner to raise a family, or it could be for work. So these connections, we do them also for like personal reasons. I think if we're honest about it, we create these connections because we end up receiving. Again, you give, you receive, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. So yeah, creating these connections is something important, and we don't need that much. But the good ones end up leading into just good results, good outputs, good connections, good work, good life. So yeah, maybe this could be my definition of connections or good connections.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, for
beautiful
sure.
answer.
What fun projects are coming up for you?
Baby number 2.
Yes. Okay, that's the biggest.
That's a big project. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one big project, and I kind of feel like I have to put aside all the other projects so I can focus on that one. But I also feel, and I don't have like anything specific to share, but what I feel in my like life cycle is that because of the pandemic, because of becoming a parent, having less time to work on personal projects. We were talking about creativity. You of course have less time to work on creative projects, and that was the case for me in the last years. So I feel that after this cycle of pandemic, becoming a parent, I think I have so much energy and ideas that I'll just like pull out of my jars that you don't see here, which is a good thing. But so many ideas that are on the side and kind of matured over time, and I try to just pull out the best ones and focus on them. And that's also one good thing about having, let's say, like lots of experience. You can focus on some things, find the ones that are probably better than others, and make them happen. So I think that's what's coming up for 2024 and the years after that, is just going back to creating, and yeah, hopefully being even more creative and doing even like more good stuff. Like, because I hope that my work is also not just about doing things and beautiful things, but that have positive social impact. And this kind of concludes the way that maybe I was introduced. So yeah, creating these connections, creating this work, creating these projects that hopefully influence positively the people around myself.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you're here today, Youssef, with us. Where can our listeners get a hold of you? We know you're not on social media, so
I am on some platforms, but I have my website where I show the work I do. After leaving LinkedIn for like 7 years, I came back, so I might leave. But if you want to find me, you'll find me.
Okay, and we'll make sure that we put the link to your website in our show notes
so
as well.
much.
Yeah.
And feel free to stalk Youssef online everywhere you find him.
Just not too much, and not in real life.
And not in real life at all.
Not in real life.
No, I'm a very open guy. Like it's crazy because I like socially present and super open, and I like to talk to people. But the reasons I quit some social platforms is not because of the connection thing, but just how things are done. So hopefully, we just made new connections here, both in person, but with our thoughts. So I'm sure these conversations will also lead to other connections. So thanks to you for having me, and thanks to everyone.
Thank you for being here. And the Connectors does not condone stalking, just so you know.
Disclaimer.
If you've got a story inside of you, consider pitching it to us, the Connectors. Get in touch with us on any of our social media platforms, and either Joe or myself, Quinten, will get back to you. So come join us on the show and let's connect.